What's up, New Zealand and the world? Lucas Lawman's Kiwi Voice. Time for another news roundup across alternate and mainstream media on this Thursday, the 23rd of June, as we head into the inaugural Matariki long weekend. We're going to kick it off with the Daily Examiner and their coverage of what's happening with Fire and Emergency New Zealand, and the head of such an organisation doing his best to gag volunteers who are commenting on the NZPfu, so that's the New Zealand Professional Firefighters Union, the action they're taking. We'll chuck this up on the screen there. This is the Daily Examiner's coverage. IFenz tries to gag volunteers from commenting on the NZPfu action. Now, there are multiple significant issues affecting Fenz at the moment, including pay disputes, maintenance issues with trucks and plant, the corporatisation of IFenz at the expense of these day-to-day concerns and running costs, and of course the unscientific vaccine mandate that doesn't get mentioned that is costing valuable firefighters their jobs should they choose not to take this thing. Deputy National Commander of IFenz has this week sent out the following. As this is a matter between Fire and Emergency and the NZPfu, I appreciate you continuing to undertake your roles as you normally would. There is no need to make any different agreements or arrangements. In addition, I strongly encourage you to not make public comments regarding the strike or bargaining. I would also remind you of the normal code of conduct and policies that still apply. So, passive-aggressive stuff there from the head of Fenz regards to any kind of comment. So, trying to shut down dissent, it would seem not a comfortable place to be in. This is not the only attempt, though, this current attempt, according to the Daily Examiner. We'll chuck this one up on the screen there. They are saying other IFenz staff who are not members of the NZPfu report they have also been threatened with disciplinary action if they speak about the NZPfu strike action or bargaining. Some non-NZPfu members have defied orders not to communicate with the NZPfu at all to let us know, as in the Daily Examiner, how oppressive IFenz leadership is behaving. Managers are being told to take photos, would you believe, of NZPfu members undertaking lawful industrial action for the purposes of possible disciplinary action. Kiwi Voice will continue to report on this situation with IFenz as it develops. It's something that we are quite interested on, and as mentioned in the past, IFenz is assisting in raising awareness of the issues around this critical part of New Zealand society. Moving on now to the BFD. Always a favourite to check out on the daily rounds. We've got a quick word there from David Seymours. It's definitely worth a read. It is Government Actions Like a Skit from Monty Python is the title. David Seymours, we'll chuck this up on the screen there, writes a piece that discusses the apparent lunacy of the move to assist Kiwis with a cost of living payment of $350 when it is only an incredibly short-term band-aid that will add to inflation. Obviously, any spending in this environment will, and that the scheme has required them to hire 300 plus further bureaucrats to administer it. That's right, you heard that right. 300 people hired at the cost of millions of dollars to distribute $350 to a lot of Kiwis that do desperately need it. Now, I'm not going to discount the fact that so many Kiwis do need this. They'll take anything that can come their way. I know of plenty of people in my personal life that are grateful for this. No doubt about that. And if you pay tax dollars, absolutely you should get some back. But the decision to do it now, after what the government has pursued in terms of policy to bring inflation to this point, the key factor being excess supply of money. That's the main factor for inflation. It's really a real shame, and the administration of it there. So check that out on the BFT. The New Zealand Herald has printed a spin-off article. So it's from the spin-off. They're all obviously all part of the one deal, but it's printed it with permission. Headline goes a little something like this: everything feels bad all the time, and it's not just you. It's an opinion piece. and the author Duncan Grieve states, "It's very difficult to get back to normal when everything is different. Heaps of it feels worse, and finding someone to blame is frustratingly hard." No crap there, Duncan. That is absolutely the truth. Now, what it starts off as something that seems well written and critical of the current situation does unfortunately descend into blatant propaganda. This is a crack up to actually read through. I had to pick this one apart. He goes on to say, "But as we emerge into society blinking with some new weird habits, here are some of the things that have changed." This lays the backdrop for what is about to come further down in the article. "Millions of people have died of a new illness. Millions more suffer lingering effects from it." Completely debatable, not fact. Most of us here in New Zealand have had that illness in the last 6 months, by some estimates. I can't confirm or deny that one. House prices are just up shy of 50%. Correct. Inflation has emerged from the grave to make things wildly more expensive. Everything from chicken to jib is very hard to get. Almost every sector of our society is in crisis. We now live with a non-trivial threat of nuclear war. Working from home is normal in some industries, but has hurt both home and office life. That's an interesting one. Kiwi Sabre was a horror show and is lately much worse. Kids are just not going to school. That's a very broad statement. Not sure about that one. Would have to get the figures there. And it's also really cold at the moment, whatever the relevance of that is. Now, this is where we really descend into brushing aside all the root causes of the situation that we are in. Duncan Grieve goes on to say, "For the most part, Putin aside," there you go, "the typical Putin blaming has fallen directly on New Zealand also. There isn't a clear villain. Things are demonstrably worse across many metrics, but even as we cast about for people to blame, the targets are mostly inadequate." Well, if you just take a step back there, Duncan, have a look at the government's policy and the direct short-term effects as well as long-term effects that those are having, you might see it's pretty easy where to cast the blame. I certainly wouldn't call that target inadequate. At least during the first 2 years of the pandemic, there was a visceral sense of a battle being fought, which focused the mind on this one big thing. That's true. Now we naturally turn our minds to this new reality, and what has fundamentally changed? Well, pretty much everything, I would think, mate. The article then goes on to talk about housing and the massive increases there, which is fairly accurate. It chunks in a now common disparaging comment, however, we just can't get away from these, on the Parliament protests. They're insidiously moving into pretty much every mainstream article. Some non-trivial section of our fellow population has stopped believing in objective reality, which is quite a bummer and really hard on Parliament's lawn. Oh, come on. The volume of content created escalates forever, all of us busily doing volunteer work for massive corporations, my bad, which is also quite annoying, while also being near impossible to quit. Sweeping generalisations, but disparaging comments about a certain group of society once again, unfortunately. The writer does comment on what most economists will tell you is the main cause of the insane inflation we're seeing right now, but brushes it off with a maybe. A maybe. Now, spoiler alert, the main cause, it isn't Russia. Almost everyone is predicting a recession, with an undertow of rational belief that it's what we need to address all the weird and painful stuff happening all at once. Well, it's not what we need, it's what's happened because of poor policy making and decision making. It's so obvious. But recessions are really bad, he says. Some unknown number of us will lose our jobs, homes and businesses just so the economy can be saved. That's true, that's all going to happen. This is in part every government in the world's fault for pumping too much cheap money into the economy. Oh, wow, okay, excellent. This in part is every government in the world's fault for pumping too much cheap money into the economy. That's the number one underlying cause. Oh, wait, so should we be mad at them, he says? Maybe. Maybe? But they were genuinely trying to save us all from a pandemic which emerged with no notice. So there you go, an apologist of the highest order. It goes on to make excuses for a duopoly supermarket industry. It does that for making too much money. Literally the whole point of capitalism, he says. Why the left is mad after getting us through the hardest situation since World War II. And the right is mad at the situation and is blaming government, which is also correct. He has some ability to put two and two together in terms of what's happening all around you with the economy and day to day. I would like to assume that's where you would point the finger also. Thanks everyone. That is the roundup for Thursday, the 23rd of June, 2022 here on Kiwi Voice. Appreciate you taking the time to tune in. Chuck some comments down below. Hope you like the format. Share these links around, all that usual stuff. If you've enjoyed us today, hit the send stars button on Facebook and send a donation our way. Every single dollar in these times is going back into Kiwi Voice to invest in camera gear, equipment, travel, you name it. It's being reinvested. But for now, team, stay safe, stay free. We'll see you again real soon.